Tuesday of the 15th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of Exodus. A certain man of the house of Levi married a Levite woman, who conceived and bore a son. Seeing that he was a goodly child, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took a papyrus basket, dabbed it in bitumen and pitch, and putting the child in it, placed it among the reeds on the riverbank. His sister stationed herself at a distance to find out what would happen to him. Pharaoh's daughter came down to the river to bathe, while her maids walked along the riverbank. Noticing the basket among the reeds, she sent her handmaid to fetch it. On opening it, she looked, and lo, there was a baby boy crying. She was moved with pity for him and said, "It is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call one of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" "Yes, do so," she answered. So the maiden went and called the child's own mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will repay you." The woman therefore took the child and nursed it. When the child grew, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her son and called him Moses, for she said, "I drew him out of the water." On one occasion after Moses had grown up, when he visited his kinsmen and witnessed their forced labor, he saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his own kinsmen. Looking about and seeing no one, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out again, and now 2 Hebrews were fighting. So he asked the culprit, "Why are you striking your fellow Hebrew?" But the culprit replied, "Who has appointed you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses became afraid and thought, "The affair must certainly be known." Pharaoh too heard of the affair and sought to put Moses to death. But Moses fled from him and stayed in the land of Midian. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live." I am sunk in the abysmal swamp, where there is no foothold, and I have reached the watery depths. The flood overwhelms me. Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live. But I pray to you, O Lord, for the time of your favor, O God. In your great kindness, answer me with your constant help. Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live. But I am afflicted and in pain. Let your saving help, O God, protect me. I will praise the name of God in song, and I will glorify him with thanksgiving. Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live. See, you lowly ones, and be glad. You who seek God, may your hearts revive. For the Lord hears the poor, and his own who are in bonds he spurns not. Turn to the Lord in your need, and you will live.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus began to reproach the towns where most of his mighty deeds had been done, since they had not repented. "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the mighty deeds done in your midst had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would long ago have repented in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you, it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon on the day of judgment than for you. And as for you, Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? You will go down to the netherworld. For if the mighty deeds done in your midst had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. But I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom on the day of judgment than for you." The Gospel of the Lord.
Tuesday of the 15th week in Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from Exodus 2, 1 to 15a. This is the story of how the mother of Moses saves him by putting him in a basket and then putting that basket in the Nile River. Now it's interesting that the word used for basket is the same word that's used for ark as in Noah's Ark. So as Noah and his family were saved from the flood, so the child Moses is being saved from the fate of the Israelite boys who have been ordered to be put to death by Pharaoh. Who is it who rescues Pharaoh? Pharaoh's daughter. She comes down to the river to bathe, sees the child, recognizes him as an Israelite child, but nevertheless saves his life. Then Moses is raised by his family. His mother acts as a wet nurse, and eventually he's sent to the court. After a while, he sees an Egyptian beating up an Israelite, and he strikes the Egyptian, killing him, so that he might save the Israelite. Well, the next day, he's walking out again, and he sees an Israelite hitting an Israelite, and he tries to stop the fight. What's the action of the Israelite? He says, "Are you going to kill me too, like you killed the Egyptian?" Notice, the very people he's trying to save are the ones who betray him. And that'll be true of the story of Moses all throughout his life. There's no sense of loyalty, no sense of gratitude expressed towards Moses or towards God. Pharaoh finds out that Moses has done this, and he tries to put Moses to death. Now, the name Moses gives us an indication that this story is probably true, at least that most of the elements are. The name Moses is actually an Egyptian name. It doesn't mean to be drawn out of the water, as Pharaoh's daughter says. Moses was an Egyptian name which means one who honors. We have a number of names among the Egyptian pharaohs that contain that part of the name. For example, Tutmosis, somebody who honors God Tut. Ramses, which is actually an Egyptian, Ra Moses, one who honors Ra. And so the fact that Moses has this particular name gives him an identity which ties him into Egypt. The Gospel is from Matthew 11, 20 to 24. Jesus bemoans the fact that Chorazin and Bethsaida have received a lot of miracles, but they're not ready to accept him. He says that if the miracles had been done in Tyre and Sidon, then they would have converted long before you. And in fact, in this part of the Gospel of Matthew, we hear that pagans often express a greater faith than the Israelites. That's very unusual because this is the gospel of the Jewish people. This is the gospel where Jesus is the Messiah who's sent to bring back the lost sheep of Israel. And nevertheless, even in this gospel, Jesus recognizes that those one wouldn't expect are readier to accept the message than those one would expect. This is a warning for people who are devoted to the church, devoted to their faith, that they have to be ready to convert when they see the miracles around them. And we see miracles every day. They could be the everyday miracle of the sun rising, of the fact that we're still alive with a very complicated body that could easily fall apart. The miracle of a child smiling, the miracle of a kindness done to a stranger. But there are also the greater miracles that occur, and sometimes we see them and then we say, oh, that's just coincidence. We have to open our eyes and be ready to accept the message of God as much as those who we think have no faith are also ready. And may God bless us.